Welcome to Plant Your Seed. I'm your host, Fred Ferris. On each episode, we share stories of how ordinary people have transformed their lives. Each story is compassionate, each story is authentic, and each story is a transformation. Here are the stories of the people who are changing our world by transitioning to a plant-based diet. Today on Plant Your Seed, joining us from Vermont is Jason Bolalek. Jason is the founder of Destination Liberation, a Vermont-based animal rescue organization dedicated to rescuing male calves from dairy farms and finding them forever homes. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for being here on Plant Your Seed. Can you give us an overview of what Destination Liberation is and how it works?
Destination Liberation is a rescue organization I started 2.5 years ago, and my mission is to rescue and transport calves that are deemed waste products by dairy farmers here in Vermont, usually the boys, because they will never produce milk. And what I do is transport them to homes that I find, sanctuaries, private homes. I locate homes for them, transport them, and basically share their stories so that people can see that these beings that we are trained to ignore, we can see that they are no different than our companion animals that we love and care for. My mission is to not just rescue and transport them and find them forever homes. It's to also open the public's eyes. That's my main goal.
Now, how did you start saving calves?
If you had asked me a few years ago if I thought I'd be doing this now, I would have thought you were crazy. I moved to Vermont 4.5 years ago, and I came here as a vegetarian because I had seen horrific footage about what happens to pigs, farms, and how pork products are produced. So I was familiar with farming a little, but not having grown up in a farming community, moving to Vermont was quite a change. I came up to Vermont to grow hemp. And I was here for about a year, and I had a friend who told me about what happens to dairy babies, the boys, on these dairy farms. He told me that they get shot and discarded, and I had no idea. I really never even thought about how these dairy operations function. I never even gave it a thought. And when I was told that story, it just stuck with me, and I thought about it more and more. And eventually, I had the idea that maybe I could rescue a couple, maybe just one or two, since they shoot them anyway. And one thing led to another, and my friend introduced me to a farmer who told me that he would surrender me boys if I wanted them. So one thing led to the next, and I connected with a sanctuary who ended up telling me that they would give them a home, and I coordinated that rescue. I did the journey. That really changed my life. The first time walking into the dairy farm to meet the farmer changed my life. It really opened my eyes up to what dairy farming is. And I have to say it was a really moving experience to spend time with those calves, to do that first rescue. And I posted about it on social media, and it just took off from there. And then one home became another and another and another. And that's just led me to where I am now.
You said that changed you. How did it change you? You go in as a vegetarian now at this point, and you come out a vegan? Is it a change closet or what?
It's really that simple. I knew what veganism was, and I looked at it like I would be losing something. I looked at it like I wasn't ready to give up butter. That's kind of how I had thought about it up to that point. But when I went into the dairy farm for the first time, I saw babies chained up, separated from their mothers, and a switch went off. A switch had flipped. I was now awake, and there was just no way I could see that and then eat butter or buy dairy products, because I knew what I was seeing was wrong. And I also knew that it's intentionally being hidden from the public. And it just all made sense to me. So there was no going back from there.
Why do you think it's being intentionally hidden? What do you mean by that?
I think that it's bad for business. I think if people saw the reality of these dairy operations, along with other farms, and how our products are procured, I think that it would make people think twice, especially when they realize that there's other options. So if you disconnect the public from the animals that are being exploited and abused, and you just make them products, or you give them happy faces and use clever marketing to create a myth that people buy into, it's much easier to sell your product. Hearing that calves were shot, that struck me. It really, it hit me to my core. If it did that to me, I'm sure it would do that to other people as well. Not everybody, but certainly some people.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think it's bad for business if they expose what's really happening. I mean, that's why there are laws in place to prevent the filming inside these farms, and that's why people who expose it are considered domestic terrorists. It's because the industry thrives on secrecy.
Now, do you think there are parallels that we could draw from what we know about slavery and the animal agricultural industry?
I do think there are some parallels. They're both systems of oppression. These were beings being confined, and they don't have any say in what happens to them in order to profit on that. I mean, that to me, that is the equivalent of slavery. And it's interesting that you brought up the term slavery, because when I was in the dairy farm for the first time to meet that farmer
Mm-hmm.
and discuss with him the possibility of taking a couple babies from him that he wasn't going to need, the one thing that stays with me more than anything is the chains, the clanging and clanking of the chains that were on the babies, because the babies were chained in place. They were just chained to a wall, separated from the mothers, so that those babies wouldn't nurse from the mothers. So, in order to separate them, they chain them. And hearing those chains, it reminded me of everything I know about slavery and the chains that slaves were in. I mean, it was just clear. The connection for me was made in that moment. And it's something that I'll never forget.
What was going through your head at that time when you look over or you hear all these chains clanging? What was going through your head at the time?
I think in the moment, I was too stimulated. It was too much stimulation because I'm trying to have a conversation. I'm taking all this in. It was a lot to take in. So it took me some time to process it all. And I think that when I walked out of the farm and began to process things, I also took some footage while I was inside there. And I got to watch that again and again. And I kept reliving it, right? I kept hearing the chains. And I also, the visceral reaction that's happening, there's a lot of things going on. There's the smell of the stench of the waste that's inside the farm. It's on you, and people don't understand that. When you go in these dairy farms, they're so unsanitary because cows produce so much waste. It's so much waste you can't get it off of you. You need to shower if you're in there for 5 minutes. Your clothes need to be washed. So these cattle live in that. That's what they live in. And as much as these farmers try to keep the place clean, they can't. It's impossible because cows they haven't evolved to live in these boxes we keep them in. So everything about it just goes against their evolution. But I had to process all this. It was a process that took some days, and it was so it wasn't all at once. But one thing was clear is that I knew it was wrong. It just everything about it when I was in there, it screamed this is wrong. And I was awake from that initial moment, and then all the other things just reinforced that. All the other things that I was able to process and take in reinforced that initial feeling of it being wrong to me.
Now, how big a farm are we talking? Is it like I don't know, a family farm type of thing, or is it a really big complex?
Like most farms in Vermont, this was a small family farm operation. It's an organic farm, and I would say they have I think there are about 80 to 100 cows, which is in the dairy farm world, dairy production world, this is a small farm.
Mm-hmm.
And like most farms in Vermont, it's a small one. Now, larger farms are less likely to surrender me calves, because what happens on a larger operation is that they have females having babies, calving, they call it, in larger groups. So they'll have 40, 50 babies or 100 boys or 1,000 boys at a time. So when you have that many, what they'll do is they'll sell this group of baby boys, because there's going to be a percentage of those that are boys. Mm-hmm. They'll sell those boys to veal farmers, or they will raise them as veal themselves. But because it's a smaller farm, they don't have time to spend on raising a few babies just to sell them for veal, because it's not worth it to them. When you have the price of veal that it is, it's just not worth it. The time and effort it's going to take, they're not interested in that. It's just not economical. So that's why they kill them. That's why they're able to surrender them to me. But yeah, it's a small farm operation.
So it's a small farm operation, but yet the waste of the farm that you were in, you still had to like come home and wash all your clothes and all of this?
Yes, because farming is the fundamental of farming is based on efficiency. All these dairy operations function the same way. It's to maximize profit. So if they have whatever square footage they have, they fill it with cows. The cows that are in there are going to produce a certain amount of waste, and then they're going to have to use their conveyor belts or shovel it out and get rid of it. But I mean, this stuff is it's just cows aren't designed to live this way. And that's the one thing that I always try to explain to people about farming, is that when you see cows on a farm like this one, a small farm, or a large farm, you'll notice the difference in how clean the cows are. Because the difference between a sanctuary is that in a sanctuary or natural setting and a farm setting is that the farm doesn't allow for these cows to clean themselves properly and get out of their filth. They try, mm-hmm. but that's not the priority. We're on a sanctuary in a larger, a natural setting. A cow will avoid its waste. Not always, but it generally will. And then what it will do is, even if it is in its waste, it will clean themselves. It will lick themselves clean. And you can see that in the difference between if you look at the sanctuaries where cows that I've brought, babies that I've brought to where they live, and farms, you'll see their coats are gleaming and spotless, and they're thriving. And you see examples of farms, 99%, you'll see a huge difference.
So they're similar to cats and dogs in the fact that they clean themselves.
Very similar. And that's something that I wouldn't know. I wouldn't have known because I didn't grow up around farms. I've never even considered any of this. And this is one of the things that I've learned through my journey, through these steps of rescuing, spending time with them. I'm going to beat this drum over and over, and it's that they're no different fundamentally in so many ways than the companion animals we love. We just don't know that. The public is unaware of this because cows are ignored by our culture, by our society.
What is it about cows that makes you so passionate?
Well, I think it's a connection I've made, certainly through the connection I have with my dogs, because I see how my dogs look at me. I see their processing of information. I see how sentient they are, how individualistic they are. Their personalities differ. And going through hard times with them, worrying about them, that connection to them and who they are as individuals is how I've drawn the connection to cows, because I see the same traits in them. I just see how ignored they are and how their suffering is totally ignored. And I think that the general public is unaware of this. So I want to show people that they're not that much different. You know, they may be different in some ways, but in the basics, in the basic fundamentals, they're the same.
Now, how can we help people to better understand the connection between animals and what they buy in the supermarket?
I think it's important for people to call out hypocrisy and lies when they see it. I think that it's really important to dispel these myths that the industry has created for us. And I think it's people like myself or other activists, or I think they need support. And I think it's important to never stop talking about it. I think the conversation needs to be had over and over, because the more people that we can enlighten, the better we are as a people, as a society. The root word of civilization, this comes from our moral evolution. And I think it's important to keep talking about it, because so many people are unaware. I was 40 years old and had no idea how these cows are treated or how the dairy products that are in these stores are produced. And that to me is shocking. So I think the more we talk about it, the more we can wake people up to these pressing issues.
Do you think that if people had to, say, kill their own food, it would change things?
I do. I think that because we live in modern society, a lot of people, instead of making that choice to kill animals, would just choose to eat products that are available to them. I do think that a lot of people would make the choice to avoid harm. But I think because it's so easy now to participate in that harm, because that's what they're doing, it's just harm by proxy. I think that because they're unaware, it's so easy to participate in it. But yeah, I definitely think that a lot of people would choose to eat plants rather than kill their own animals. Absolutely.
As far as making people more aware, do you feel that we should, say, show documentaries showing what actually happens to high school kids?
I do. I think that we should show elementary school children. I think that one of the ways to defeat or to change what's happening and to go a different route is to educate children. I mean, the younger, the better, because they're not already indoctrinated into a system of oppression. I think that it's very easy to fall in line with beliefs that you're already assigned. So why not assign children more ethical beliefs? I think that what we're doing is assigning children a belief to fall into a choice just because their parents did and their parents did.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as if they had a choice. I wasn't given a choice. My parents weren't given a choice. So it's the dominant paradigm making the choice. So yeah, I think that if we gave children the choice and said, okay, this is your happy meal, this is how it's produced, this is the truth, then yeah, I think that we would be living in a different world.
What do you want people to understand about the dairy industry?
I want people to understand that there is no fundamental difference between large farms, small farms, grass fed, organic. These are all just marketing terms. They all function the same way. They impregnate females. The females must give birth to lactate. This is a fact. This can't change because they eat their free-range grass-fed cows. It doesn't matter. These fundamentals must exist. So all farms, all dairy farming is oppressive. It's all brutal, and all those mothers are killed when they can no longer produce milk. And all the boys are killed, I would say, early as a day old to maybe 5 months old. They're all killed. That doesn't change on the size of the operation. It doesn't change on what they're fed. And I think those myths really need to be addressed because it gives people a loophole to say, well, I only buy from a small farm, or I only get it from a farmer I know. They're all using the same system. And it's very important for people to hear the truth because I can't tell you how many times I see and hear that argument or that justification. Not really an argument, it's just a justification. People tell themselves things to justify their choices. I want people to understand that it's all the same. It just may differ the size of the farm or how they're fed or if they go out for a couple hours a day. That may change depending on where the dairy farm is located because geography plays a part in that. But what doesn't change is that the system is abusive and oppressive, and all the cows die. This is a fact.
Why do you think people try to justify what they do?
People try to justify it to themselves so they don't have to change because I think that humans want to tell themselves that they are good, inherently good. And I think that they also don't want to change. I think that people really fear change. And I also think that by admitting that it's wrong, not only would you have to say, I should change, you would also have to say, what I've been doing is wrong. So there's a lot of accountability that would need to take place. And I think that is a lot for people to handle. So I think it's much easier for them to just justify a choice they make by pointing to grass-fed organic as an excuse. Not an excuse, a justification. We want to use these justifications for that reason.
Okay, so take us through a rescue.
Well, the first part of a rescue is the most difficult, and that is finding homes. That's the very first step. And I try to use my my social media networking to find a home, whether it's a sanctuary or even a private adopter. I try to reach out to different organizations, and I go back through messages I've received from people reaching out, telling me that they'd be willing to adopt. Or that's my first step, is to try to locate a home that's suitable, that's going to be a forever home. That's the first step. So when I find a home that is within reasonable distance of travel, which could be 14 to 16 hours, I don't like to go over that range. I think past that is too far because it's stressful for babies. It's also a lot on myself to travel back and forth that much. So I try to keep them within a 14 to 16 hour radius. I mean, there's exceptions. Once I found a home, then I'll contact farmers that I know and find out when they'd be expecting babies, because they're always expecting babies. I have a good network of farmers that I stay in contact with. And then once I know that either babies have already arrived or will be arriving, I'll just basically start to plan the trip. And then it just it'll turn into, okay, I'm going to go take photos of the babies. I put the photos online on my Facebook, on my Instagram. Then I start to do a fundraiser. I have great support, so I reach out to them and raise the money to do the trip, because I think it's important to support the sanctuaries. I would never try to adopt out babies and expect the sanctuaries to come up with the cost of that, of the transport and the rescue, because they're going to be supporting, feeding, caring for medical expenses, vaccinations. They're going to be taking care of all this for the remainder of their lives, which is 20, could be 25 years. It's a small gesture, something that I could do. That'll be my next step, will be fundraising, and then next would be planning the journey. coordinating with the farmer when I'm going to pick them up. I basically plan out a couple days because a trip is usually going to take a couple days to do, where I pick them up in the morning. I head to wherever I'm going. I line the vehicle, whatever vehicle I'm using. Usually I'll rent a small compact SUV because they're great on gas. I'll line it with tarps and straw for bedding, and then I'll pick them up in the morning. I'll make my journey to where I'm going, stopping to feed them on the way, and then they'll arrive at the sanctuary, and then I spend some time with them there. I make sure they're settling. I feed them. I think it's important to document this by filming them and showing them in their new home and showing the transition. I think that's really important to capture all this so that people can see where they've come from, where they are, and how they can be treated. And I try to tell their whole story, and then I'll wish them well, and I'll say goodbye to them, and then I always get to see them. I always stay in contact with either the sanctuary or the private home, so I can update my followers with what's going on in their life and pictures of them maturing. I think that's essential to what I'm doing and to spreading the message.
Mm-hmm.
That's a typical rescue, and it's always so rewarding to leave them. It's always the best part to say goodbye. It's not sad to see them go. It's actually the happiest moment.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that if it was sad when you had to let them go, but obviously it would be such a happy moment knowing that they have a forever home.
Yeah, it's not sad because I understand my role, and it's very fulfilling to see them get to where they're going. I'm just helping them along to get to where they need to go, and I can always see them. I can hear about their personality, or I can stop and see them if I'm in their area doing a rescue in the future. So it's very rewarding to know that they're in a loving home. I'm not sad at all. It's just so fulfilling.
Now, what is it like to transport animals? I mean, do you get strange looks? Do people actually see, like, I don't know, calves in your back seat?
Yeah. It's one thing about transporting is that it is nerve wracking because these babies are vulnerable, because they're taken from their mothers, because they're young. It's stressful. They really need to be with their mothers. That's the best way to ensure their health and safety.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't have that choice. We're going to do the next best option, and that is going to come with some risks. So they can get sick, especially the stress of a trip. These moments I'm with them, these babies are hanging in the balance. So it's important to monitor them, and as happy as I am to do it, in the moments of transport, I have to stay acutely aware of what's happening with them. And these are trying times. There's a need for me to stay focused. So it's a relief when I get them to where they're going and they're happy and healthy and they're eating and they're pooping the way they should be, and they're not showing any adverse effects. So that's my main concern. But yes, to your comment about being noticed, that's a perfect conversation starter when I have to stop at a rest stop and I'm feeding them, when I'm bottle feeding these calves through the back window, and a crowd gathers around and they take pictures, and I talk to them, and they're going inside to order their Starbucks or their latte, and I say, well, the reason why I'm saving them is because, and then I tell their whole story. So I think that's really important. I see every opportunity to talk about it with people, and that is a great opportunity because these calves, they're attention getters, just like on social media. It's a great way to get people's attention, animal lovers' attention. These cute faces. This is the perfect vehicle to convey the message. This is what I'm all about. Using their face and how cute they are and how puppy-like they are to convey the message, so that people don't even realize the message is coming. I often get people at a drive-through, for example, when I'm ordering a Beyond Burger, and I have them in the back, and all the workers from, I forget where I was, a Hardee's somewhere in the South. And we're a Beyond Burger, and then they crowd around, and then I talk about Beyond, and these are all opportunities.
Mm.
So yeah, it's a spectacle, but it's one I welcome.
Can you give me some examples of the stress that you're under as you're transporting these animals? I mean, like, is there somebody who comes with you? Because, I mean, you're driving the car. I know just my kids going crazy in the back seat or whatever. It's difficult, but I can't imagine transporting an animal, trying to understand what's going on with it, how it's feeling, everything like that, while you're piloting a vehicle that is a hunk of steel about 70 miles an hour down a highway.
That is something that I would say it's a skill that I've developed. And it's not, it's more about understanding what needs to be done and staying focused. Now, the nice thing about calves that I didn't know in the beginning that I've learned to understand is that they're babies. So like all infants, they sleep a lot. Generally, they sleep, I would say 75, 80% of the ride.
Mm-hmm.
So they stand up, they look around, they adjust, they go back to sleep. The beginning of the trip is when they're most awake and alert because they don't know what is going on. It's just a change of environment. But once they settle, they pretty much sleep. So that part is easy. The stressful part for me isn't really the actual travel, it's just making sure that they eat. Because once they're on the road, they need to eat at some point during the journey. These babies need to eat on schedule. It's very important because calves are pretty tough on the outside of their bodies, but they're very vulnerable and sensitive on the inside of their bodies, specifically their digestion, stomachs, things of that nature. So you want that to be running smoothly. And a sign of stress would be them not eating, not taking a bottle while we're on a trip,
Mm-hmm.
or them being lethargic, too lethargic, or them scouring, which would be diarrhea. Those are the things I don't want to see. So those are the things I have to be aware of. But actually, the drive itself, it's easy. Calves don't make for a difficult drive. My dogs make for a more difficult drive because they get antsy. Every time I stop, they want to get out or they want to know what's going on. Calves aren't like that.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that's interesting about calves is I almost always have two, but they always bond. They're not like puppies in the sense that they are rambunctious and roughhouse. They just snuggle and bond immediately. It doesn't matter if they came from different farms in the very beginning. If you put calves together right away, they immediately bond. And I think that's really that's something I've learned, and I think it's really touching to see. And I think that's because they're herd animals. They just have this instinct to bond, so they do it automatically.
Mm-hmm.
And I think another thing that really helps me along these journeys is they're so calm. Being in the presence of cows in general, they're so curious and calm. There's something there that is, it's a privilege in a sense to be with them. So I would say I'm lucky in a way. They actually keep me calm. They help me to stay calm. It becomes a symbiotic relationship that, yeah, I'm overseeing them, helping them, guiding them, but in a way, they're helping me too.
Let's get back to your transition to a plant-based diet. You went into the farm as a vegetarian. You came out, what, with a couple of calves and as a vegan. Is that about the way it went?
Yeah, except for the coming out with the calves. I met with the farmer, and I actually didn't take my first two calves from him. But that was just the first farm I had went into to talk with someone about it. He actually didn't have any calves at the time, but he said he would be in contact with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up developing a relationship with him and that family. But while I was in the farm, being my first farm, yeah, I walked out and I said, I'm not going to participate in this anymore. There's no way I can justify not going vegan, not eating plant based anymore. Because what had held me back was, as I said, I was vegetarian. prior to that. And what held me back was habits, things that I liked to consume, my taste buds, eating butter. I couldn't see outside of the habits that I had created for myself. But I just looked at it in a different way when I walked out of that farm. Those things didn't matter anymore. I just realized how petty and small and insignificant that they would be if I continued to. It would be an insignificant thing for me to sacrifice if I were to give them up. So there was no way I could continue. I just couldn't the justification wasn't there anymore. It just was gone.
What positive changes did you see after, physically and mentally?
Well, it was an awakening. I would say mentally, it was difficult. And not in the sense that, as far as my diet, it was difficult to then be so aware of how inundated and surrounded we are with these products of cruelty. So that has been the challenge. And as far as a positive change, I feel like I've grown in a spiritual way.
Mm.
And I feel like I've also inspired so many people to now also follow the path I've taken because I can talk about these things with passion and conviction. And I think it's helped other people see that it's not as hard as we think to give these things up.
Now, was there anything holding you back from becoming vegan other than just not knowing the full story?
No, I think that was all. I really think that was all. I think that I just imagined it to be harder than it was. I think I imagined it to be harder than it is just for the fear of change and getting over fear. That fear has been a great awakening. I think when we confront our fears, that's how we grow.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a great experience in so many ways. It's shaped who I am. It's helped me become who I am. I mean, I'm still learning and evolving and changing. You had to think that who I was and how I saw things, that perspective to me now, it just feels so narrow minded. I didn't see the big picture.
Where did you get the courage to start the whole destination liberation?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if I got it or it just, I feel in some ways like it just fell in my lap. I moved to Vermont to grow hemp and I was doing that, but my path and the doors that have opened for me, it just feels like it was meant to be. I don't know if it's courage or it's just that I'm obsessive. I think it's more that I'm just obsessive, where have to, I have to show people the truth, and I have to speak for these babies. It's difficult that I can't save them all, but I want to do what I can, and I don't know if that's courage. I don't really feel like I'm courageous. I just feel like this fell in my lap. My friend introduced me to the farmer. I was already a little bit on social media and I was in touch with some sanctuaries and trying to understand what they're doing. So I feel like I don't see myself as courageous, honestly.
You can be presented with this opportunity and just look the other way. I mean, it takes some courage to say, you know what, I'm going to figure out a way that I can, I'm going to contact sanctuaries. I'm going to contact farmers. I'm going to plan a trip. I'm going to take photos. I'm going to fundraise. I'm going to plan and coordinate. I'm going to rent an SUV. I'm going to throw some bedding in there with a tarp, and then I'm going to go. And I'm going to make this happen because it's right. There's courage with that.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I guess there is. I think also maybe I'm selfish in the way that what I gained from doing it in the beginning or how I felt, I'm hungry for more of that experience. It makes me feel so good and it's so fulfilling. I want to continue to do it and I become obsessive with it. Even right now, I'm planning a rescue and I haven't done a rescue and it's been 2 months and it's the longest time that I haven't done a rescue. It's been the longest gap since I've started. And I feel like I feel like it's been way too long. I'm getting antsy to do it. But where it initially came from, I don't know. I can't pinpoint that. I just, maybe it's always been in me. My destiny has been to rescue animals because I don't know, a connection I made when I was younger, and it's just flourished and developed. That's something I've thought about. I guess this is just who I am. But I'm flattered that you would say it's courageous, because that's an honor to be considered that.
What is one thing that's exciting you right now with your Destination Liberation project?
What's exciting is that more and more people are making the connection. And what's exciting is that I have so much support. That really excites me. The amount of support I have from the rescue community and the vegan community that I connect with. It's been incredible, the amount of people I've been able to meet and get involved with who are doing such amazing and inspirational work. It's so exciting to know these people who can teach me things about animal behavior, about rescue, about ethics. All of those things are super exciting.
What is one habit, hack, or tip that helps you stay on track with your plant-based diet?
My advice to anybody listening would be to just try to replace those things that are your favorites or that are your habits, and just make new habits in place of those. I switched butter on bagels in the morning for avocado and everything sprinkles. This is simple. You can find something to just replace your favorite things. When you do that, it becomes so much easier. You just replace old habits with new ones. Just talk to people, ask people, read. If you're interested in it, it's a lot easier than you think. Once you get those habits going, it doesn't stay an uphill battle for long. It becomes a downhill one rather quickly.
Now, is there a cookbook or book that you've gifted to somebody transitioning to a plant-based diet?
I would recommend reading any of Melanie Joy's work, specifically Why We Love Dogs, Eat Pigs, and Wear Cows. I think this book really underscores the ethics of the choice and the choices we make. Also, the choices we make without thinking, and why we've created the habits that we have. I think this book is a must read. But as far as recipes, I would definitely look at some of the minimalist bakers' recipes, which are easy to find online. They have a searchable database that's incredible for easy to find recipes and easy recipes to just replace meat and dairy products, animal products, with plant-based products. Really simple. There's a great resource there.
Finally, can you give me one word to describe how you felt before you became vegan, and one word to describe how you feel now that you are vegan?
A word to describe how I felt before I was vegan? I would say complacent. And a word to describe who I am now, I would say awake.
Complacent and awake.
That's how I would describe it.
Such a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for taking the time. What is the best way for people to find you on Instagram, the web, and social media?
The best way to find me, look up Destination Liberation. You can find me on Instagram. My page is also on Facebook. I have a website that's under construction. I'm also on TikTok, but if you just search Destination Liberation or my name, Jason Bolalek, you can find me. And thank you so much. It's a pleasure and an honor to speak with you and talk about my work and speak with somebody who is trying to educate others. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks again for being on Plant Your Seed.
Thank you very much.
Hope you are inspired by this story, and remember, it's never too late to plant your seed. Links to everything we talked about on the podcast can be found on Instagram at plant.yourseed in the show notes tab in the bio. If you enjoyed the show, remember to leave us a review, and until next time, thank you for listening.